What is happening, my friends? Today we're talking about training periodization or periodized training models and how to break a plateau so that you can continue to grow. Let's get to it. So first and foremost, it's important to understand a couple things here. We do have a point of diminishing returns. This is a threshold that you should never really break through. The only time that you should really get really close to that is a peak phase in training. For example, when you see an athlete, a strength athlete, a high-performing athlete in this high peak performance phase, it is really only just a sliver of what their whole year looks like. Now, leading up to these peak phases, or in terms of resistance training, leading up to maximum recoverable volume, or MRV, the athlete or student will often have an accumulation phase leading up to that peak point. So this point of diminishing returns is really a place that is just way too much intensity, way too much volume, way too much frequency. It goes beyond the maximum recoverable volume, meaning that it's just too much for your body to recover from and adapt to. You should not be training there, right? On the other hand, we have this MED, minimal effective dose. This is a great place to start all your training phases. It's a great place to start as a novice, and it's more than enough for most people to begin with. Anything below that, you're just a lazy bastard, right? You've got to do more. You've got to get up off the couch, right? You break this threshold, you can start your training programs or your first several months in your training career at the minimal effective dose without taxing your joints, without overtaxing your central nervous system. You feel good, you're not injuring yourself, you're recovering well, and you're learning how to move correctly. You're learning about the process. You don't need to go way up here immediately. In fact, most of you guys start out here and then immediately jump to something way up here, when in reality, all of your results lie within the minimal effective dose and the MRV, the maximum recoverable volume. Too little, too much, hang out here, and we'll get to how to program that for yourself in a moment. So in today's lesson, we're going to use a 6-week hypertrophy training cycle, or training for size, with the 7th week being a deload week. Now, a lot of you guys are completely skipping deload week, and I can say that that is one of the main factors that you aren't growing any further, aren't getting any stronger, outside of the fact that you're probably just doing way too much shit volume and hammering the shit out of yourself for far too long. Fact of the matter is, we need to take these pit stops in order to continue moving forward. It's just how it works. The accumulation of fatigue over a proper training cycle needs to come back down in order to restore everything in the body. Connective tissues, joints, hormones, central nervous system, muscles, all of the above need to come back to a homeostatic point in order for you to continue to grow. When this is ignored for whatever reason, due to lack of knowledge, training experience, or maybe just your ego, the accumulation of fatigue over the course of time will cause a decline in performance over the course of time. So when fatigue continues to go up and you're not allowing yourself to recover fully, performance will come down, you will not grow any further, you will not get stronger. That is where your plateau begins. So let's get into how to initiate your hypertrophy cycle with a periodized model. Okay, week number 1 and number 2, we're at this pretty low level, minimal effective dose. We don't need to start out down here and just go, oh, I hope I can get results immediately. It doesn't fucking work that way. Stop doing that. So the way that I initiate a lot of hypertrophy cycles for myself and my clients is to start out this low minimal effective dose, just enough to create the stimulus that you can recover from while you're sleeping or doing active recovery or eating enough, for example. And then eventually we'll go into an accumulation phase. But week number 1, we're gonna leave, for example, 2 to 4 reps in reserve. Let's say 3 reps in reserve, right? So if you're training in the 10 to 15 rep range for hypertrophy, you could do anything from 6 to 30 realistically. It doesn't really matter. But let's use 10 to 15 rep range, for example. And I ask a client to pick a weight in week number 1. It's kind of this measuring period. I want them to stay in that 10 to 15 rep range with a weight that allows them to go 3 reps short of failure, not 2 failure. We'll get to that later. So moving on from week number 1, we've measured the weights that we're going to use. We understand the rep range. We know what weight we can use in that rep range that's prescribed to allow you to train 3 reps short of failure within the rep range, okay? That's week number 1. It's really kind of this measuring period. Week number 2, we'll stay within the 3 RIR, reps in reserve. We'll stay at 3 reps short of failure within the rep range, but we might add 5 to 10 pounds to the movement depending on the movement. So what this does in week number 2 is just adds a little bit more stimulus for your body to adapt to and overcome through muscle growth and strength, neurological adaptations. Now this actually blows a lot of people's minds as far as how many sets to do, but I do prescribe for a lot of clients, especially novice clients, and I do this myself on occasion depending on the goal and where I've been the last several weeks. However, I do usually prescribe just 2 working sets per exercise, sometimes a couple times a week. But usually it'll be something like 2 to 3 warm-up sets leading up to working weight, and then just 2 working sets for that movement with the prescribed RIR, reps in reserve. I will also do 3 sets of particular movements as well, but really you don't need much more than 2 or 3 sets depending on your experience level. Now, moving on to week number 3, okay, backtrack. Week number 1, measuring period. Week number 2, add 5 to 10 pounds, and you're leaving 3 reps short of failure in weeks number 1 and 2, okay? Week number 3, we're gonna keep the same weight as week number 2, but we're gonna go 2 reps short of failure, 2 RIR, okay? So now we should be able to, at the week number 2's weight, get an extra couple reps in each and every set. So you're gonna go in, you're gonna open your logbook or however you log it and look at, for example, I hit incline bench at 185 for 13 reps last week. My objective for week number 3 is to beat that number, right? So I wanna get at least 14, if not 15. So moving on to week number 4, you can see that we're well into the accumulation phase. This is accumulation leading up to that peak phase, that peak performance, that sliver that you guys see all the sexy Instagram people operating at, right? So we're in week number 4 and we're gonna repeat kind of what we did in week number 2. However, this week we're training 2 reps short of failure like we did in week number 3, 2 RIR, but again, we're gonna add 5, 10, maybe even 15 pounds depending on the movement. Now, week number 5, you can see that we're really climbing up there near to that MRV, that maximal recoverable volume, okay? We're gonna do something similar that we did in week number 3. We're gonna use the same weight as week number 4, but we're not gonna go 2 reps short of failure. We're gonna go 1 rep short of failure. So you should be able to open up your logbook and see that you, for example, squat 315 for 10 reps last week. Your only objective in week number 5 is to beat that number. So if you get 11, 12, 13 reps, you're doing good in week number 5. Week number 6, peak week in this accumulation phase, in this example of a hypertrophy training cycle. So week number 6, we're gonna do the same thing we did in week number 4. We're gonna use the same RIR, reps short of failure, as we did in week number 5. But again, we're gonna add 5, 10, maybe 15 pounds depending on the movement. That might be pushing it because it is week number 6 and peak week. However, we're gonna go 1 rep short of failure like we did in week number 5, but add a little bit of load, again, for your body to adapt to and overcome by the means of muscle growth and central nervous system adaptations such as strength. And then we're gonna deload. But you can see that this has its cap. This progressive overload has its cap. If it didn't, there would be people out there bench pressing freight trains, and it just doesn't fucking work, right? A lot of you guys are trying to hang out up here or go up to this peak week and just try and live in that glory, live in that moment. And I get it. I did it myself for a long time. I can tell you that most people that come my way are just hanging out way too high, way too much up here, right? For far too long, not seeing any more results, okay? So, deload week. So as I mentioned in the beginning, you have to take your deload weeks. I don't care who you are. You cannot operate like Superman 365 days a year. You cannot outsmart science. You're not a special case genetic anomaly that can just do things like that, right? You can't just watch Ronnie Coleman videos and expect to be like him, okay? He's a genetic freak. Now there are several ways to deload. What I personally like to do for myself and what I usually program for clients is to take their peak week numbers in performance and volume down to 50%. Now, psychologically, this is a challenge, but I always tell people, hey, look, you've made it if the biggest challenge in your training is deload week. So for example, if you benched 200 pounds for 4 sets of 10 in your peak phase in week number 6, I would ask you in week number 7 to do 2 sets of 5 at 100 pounds. Now this just freaks people out and they think it's completely pointless. They've gone to the gym and they haven't done shit. Fact of the matter is, it's far worse to try and kick the shit out of yourself all the fucking time and get nowhere, right? You have to remember, you just have to take these deloads, right? Fatigue accumulation, performance declines, not worth it, right? It's all ego lifting. So once you've gone through this first deload, this whole sector here, we will call a mesocycle. You can rinse and repeat. You can go back to week number 1, but your loads, the amount of weight that you use in week number 1 could be higher than when you initiated, right? So you're gonna go up, accumulation phase, deload, rinse and repeat, another accumulation phase. The more you do this, the more you will grow. The more weight you can push, the more reps you can crank out. You can switch up the exercises if you want to. You can switch up the rep ranges if you want to. I usually recommend staying in a similar rep range so you can continue to monitor progress. However, this is a periodized model, right? You're kind of ramping up to this peak season, this in season, followed by a post-season recovery phase. And then we're gonna go kind of ramp it up into a pre-season peak, recover, recycle, rinse, repeat, eat, sleep, grow, train correctly, train hard, especially in these last weeks. I know that this sounds kind of bitchy, right? Week number 1. Week number 7 sounds like a complete bitch move. Fact of the matter is you need to. You should be training hard, right? Especially as this ramps up. But this week number 5 and 6, that's when you go fucking hard, all right? You can't do that all the time, all right? It's unfortunate. I would like to myself. It just doesn't work, especially as you get into your 40s, guys. All right, I hope this helps. So guys, if you've been stuck in a plateau for a while, you're just not growing, you're not getting any stronger, or you're stuck in a fat loss plateau and you can't lose any more fat and your body composition isn't changing the way you'd like to. Myself and my other coaches are always happy to help. Just hit the link in my bio and apply for coaching. We'll hop on a call, discuss the process, see if we're a good fit, and we'll get you rolling on finally achieving the goals that you deserve, because you're doing all the hard work. But sometimes you need that strategy and that accountability and an evidence-based approach instead of doing random stuff to get you to where you need to be. Did I spell all of that right? How now, brown cow? How now, brown cow? How now, brown cow? Red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather.